Member for Oropouche West.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, after 8 years of brutal budgetary bombardment, ferocious fiscal fight-downs, endless economic eclipses, and mass monetary mayhem, we had hoped that this Minister of Finance would have redeemed himself by presenting a people-centered budget to provide relief to the long-suffering population of Trinidad and Tobago. But we hoped in vain. Parents complain as new school term nears, prices too high. Trinidad Express, September 3rd, 2023. Government has a duty to tackle high food prices. Trinidad Guardian, 21st January 2023. Plenty people suffering. Trinidad Express, August 28, 2022. The people want water. Trinidad Express, 4th of September 2023. Murder rate worsens. Trinidad Newsday, October 6th, just a few days ago, 2023. These are just a few of the headlines highlighting the social decay, the economic burdens, and the suppression of prosperity by the failed policies of this government. Critical issues which we hoped that the Minister of Finance would have addressed in this budget. But yet again, the quality of lives of our citizens has been ignored. Yet again, the Finance Minister has missed the boat. Yet again, the Minister of Finance has abandoned the tormented citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. Yet again, single mothers waited to hear a plan that will improve their lives. Yet again, small businesses waited to hear a strategy to ignite growth. Youths listened with despair last Monday, Madam Speaker, as yet again the government abandoned their holistic development and educational aspirations. Pensioners forced to choose between medicine and food prayed that something would be done to reverse the continuing decline of their standard of living. The entire country desperately yearned for a plan to confront the crime tsunami that is drowning our nation in blood and pain. Citizens listened, hoping to hear about job creation, new industries, and a wage that allows them to survive this cost of living crisis. But everybody was left disappointed. And that's why I thank you, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity to comment on this budget on behalf of the citizens of my beloved country. Madam Speaker, Budget 2024 is the biggest con job ever foisted on the citizens of this country other than Emailgate.
Member, could you find another way to see that? That borders on being non-parliamentary. Find another way to see that, please.
Sure, Madam Speaker. Budget 2024 is the biggest hoax ever foisted on the citizens of this country other than Emailgate. Madam Speaker, it is said that a swindler gives with one hand and takes back with two. He takes back what he gives to you with one hand and takes back what you already had with the other hand. This is a minister who gives you a $3 minimum wage and take back thousands in property tax, higher electricity rates, higher water rates, and higher fuel prices. This is a government that withheld labor workers money for years, making them suffer to make ends meet, took them to court to force unions to accept 4% and then pretend that the debt that they are grudgingly settling is somehow a P&M Christmas gift. Back pay is not a gift. It is what workers have worked hard for and what you are owing them. Madam Speaker, this budget is designed to gaslight the population to distract from the billions that are being spent while cabinet ministers hide conflicts of interest behind recusals. We on this side will continue standing in the gap to confront charlatans wherever they are, to speak truth to power and to demand accountability for our taxpayers' dollars. Madam Speaker, allow me to congratulate the leader of the opposition, the Honorable Kamala Persad-Bissessar, for her sterling presentation on Friday, which provided evidence of the true state of the Trinidad and Tobago economy and provided multiple anti-crime initiatives which can be implemented today if this government were really serious about crime. But we know that they are not. I also congratulate all my colleagues on this side who spoke before, publicly exposing this government's dishonesty, corruption, and mismanagement. Madam Speaker, the rules of engagement require me to rebut the contribution of the member opposite, the junior Minister of Finance who spoke before me. This year, however, the minister predictably continued in the same vein as he did last year and in the years before that when he spoke on the correct bill. He was inconsequential, uninformed, imprudent, and irrelevant. Unable to defend his minister's budget speech, he chose fluff, bluff, and flams. Madam Speaker, it is often said that the apple does not fall far from the tree, but this apple has fallen miles away and clearly lost its way. The minister today said that he was personally involved in consultations, Madam Speaker, with various interest groups and business houses and the unions, and they were all in agreement with raising the retirement age to 65. Madam Speaker, I refer the minister to the newspapers of yesterday where there was a joint trade union release by 3 of the largest trade unions which disprove everything that the minister just said, that the unions do not support the increase. You are misleading, sir. You are misleading. Madam Speaker, when a Minister of Finance speaks, he is supposed to inspire confidence and hope. Listen to what yesterday's newspaper said. And I quote, Madam Speaker, that the country needs to change direction is becoming increasingly obvious. It cannot be business as usual. The crime situation continues to deteriorate as the evidence mounts that a gang culture and a protection racket are growing stronger as our institutions deteriorate. The same is true for the country's economic performance. Absent the increase in energy and petrochemical prices in 2022, and this country would still be in a state of depression. Apart from a few minor initiatives, the 2024 budget speech rehashed several old ideas and dispensed just enough populist measures to give the appearance of improvement and that the government was hard at work. There was no new policy direction, no attempt to measure the success of current policies or ongoing initiatives. Apart from the self-congratulatory rhetoric, there was no initiative or comment on the government's effort to improve its administrative machinery. These are not my words, Madam Speaker. These are the words which echo the national mood, and they are from yesterday's Guardian's editorial, Madam Speaker. And after listening to the junior minister ramble on for 55 minutes, it is no surprise that this government, this country, is unable to attract foreign direct investments, that businesses are closing down and migrating, and that our economy, under their stewardship, is smaller than it was 8 years ago. Madam Speaker, if you had listened, and I know that you did, if you listened to the presentation of the Member of Parliament for Siparia, I want to tell both Ministers of Finance and all of those opposite that if they had paid attention to that presentation, that was a plan for recovery. That was a plan for dealing with crime. That is a plan for dealing with agriculture. That is a plan for dealing with energy. That is a plan for dealing with job creation. That is a plan, Madam Speaker, for rescuing Trinidad and Tobago. This budget speech, Madam Speaker, presented by the Honorable Minister of Finance, is a hoax. The budget is not worth the paper it was printed on. The fiscal measures are a deliberate deception, and I will prove it to you, sir. The fiscal measures are a deliberate deception because the minister is dependent on people not fact-checking him. But Trinidadians are smarter than that. The minister told this country that he expects to spend $59.2 billion in fiscal year 2024. But according to the estimates of expenditure, the total expenditure for fiscal 2024 will be $71.4 billion, not 59.2, $71.4 billion. And we already know, given the minister's pronouncement that he will be coming back for a mid-year review to spend more money, that will be even higher. More than that, Madam Speaker, the minister in his budget speech tells the nation that the budget deficit was $5.2 billion in 2024, which he will have to seek financing for. But hidden in the estimates of revenue, another book provided by the minister, is a startling figure that the minister will actually be borrowing $13.2 billion, with $5 billion of that being foreign borrowing. So we already established that the documents that the minister is presenting has different figures to the budget speech that the minister is using. Something is wrong, Madam Speaker. Last Monday, I heard the Minister of Finance make two startling confessions. The first was the government had underfunded infrastructural development. He, of course, blamed COVID, just like his Prime Minister blamed other priorities. But the fact is that our infrastructure did not just deteriorate overnight to the abysmal level that it is today. This government has what is called implementation paralysis. This government, just to repeat it with the clarification, this government has implementation paralysis. They talk the talk, but they cannot walk the talk. And that is why, Madam Speaker, every single year this minister presents a series of massive infrastructure projects, announces game changers after game changers, goes through the process of conceptualizing projects to treat with specific concerns like flooding and road construction, evaluating them, designing them, and even costing these projects. Every year, the minister comes to the parliament and gets hundreds of millions of dollars approved for these projects, and then does nothing. The projects are abandoned, the problems remain, the citizens get no relief, and the minister returns the following year and year after year to make new promises that he has no intentions of keeping. The second confession of the minister was that his government is fully, and I quote, fully aware that infrastructure investment has a strong impact on economic growth. Madam Speaker, investment in infrastructure, roads, drains, rivers, building construction, etc., plays a known pivotal role in economic growth and in social development via job creation and the multiplier effect on other sectors. So if the minister knows that the role of infrastructure development is critical in national development, and then turns around and neglects implementation for 8 years, ask yourself why, Madam Speaker. Why the intentional and repeated refusal to implement projects approved by the ministry and funding for which was approved by the parliament? That is not merely incompetence, and there's a lot of that too. That is deliberate neglect. And that neglect has caused millions of dollars in direct financial loss and inconvenience to citizens via floods, lack of potable water, and horrendous roads across our nation. In fact, ministerial neglect of our road infrastructure has even caused loss of life, Madam Speaker, in Trinidad and Tobago in the 21st century. Madam Speaker, the ministers opposite, including the minister who just spoke, glowingly talked about the amount of money they spent on project after project after project. Let me share some information with him. Indisputable facts. You see, facts are stubborn things, Madam Speaker, and here's what the facts have to say. In 2016, there was no COVID. The government got Parliament's approval to spend $196.2 billion. My mistake. The government got Parliament's approval to spend $196.2 million on development projects under the Ministry of Works and Transport. That would be drains, roads, river cleanings, etc. Madam Speaker, of that $196.2 million, do you know how much was actually spent? $53.8 million is what they actually spent. A quarter of what they had parliamentary approval for. 2017, same thing. 2018, same thing. 2019, same thing. 2020, same thing. 2021, same thing. 2022, same thing. 2023, same thing. And what do you think will happen in 2024? Same thing. Madam Speaker, overall, this Parliament has approved $1.8 billion to be spent by the Ministry of Works and Transport on critical infrastructure to date. And of that, $1 billion has not been spent. $1 billion. So while citizens navigate the bogus that our roads have become, or fight for survival in floods with massive unemployment, or stand in rain with a bucket hoping to get water, this PNM government has sat on their hands, refusing to address the critical issues that they know are crippling citizens. That is heartless and shameless. But what about the money that was spent? The government has spent $863 million on infrastructure development projects over the last 8 years. And still, we have the worst infrastructure in our nation's history. Where the money gone? I have always said, Madam Speaker, that this government has money. This country has money. It is just that this government refuses to spend it on citizens. They refuse to spend it to improve the quality of lives of our citizens, Madam Speaker. Let me share with you some more indisputable facts taken from the various Auditor General's reports of the public accounts of Trinidad and Tobago for the last 7 years. In fiscal 2026, total parliamentary appropriations, including budget, supplemental, and direct charges, approved by the Parliament to be spent in the national interest, totaled $66.97 billion. Do you know how much, Madam Speaker? This is 2016. Do you know how much this government actually spent of that $66.97 billion? They spent $56.6 billion, Madam Speaker. The Minister of Finance refused to spend $10.4 billion that he told Parliament he needed. 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023, billions approved for education, healthcare, national security, public utilities, social support, approved by the Parliament, disregarded and discarded by this government. Over the period 2016 to 2022, Madam Speaker, the Auditor General confirms that programs and projects worth $34 billion that the PNM deemed essential when they brought it to the Parliament were abandoned by this government. So what exactly was not done? What projects were considered so critical that it had to be done, finance located, approved by the ministry, then cabinet, and then the Parliament, and then scuttled by the Minister of Finance? Today I ask the Honourable Minister of Finance. Today I ask you, sir, through you, Madam Speaker, to provide a complete list of projects which were abandoned by this government after financing was approved by the Parliament. I am also certain that when the data is provided by the Auditor General, we will see again billions of unspent allocations for 2023 and 2024 because the trend continues. You come to Parliament, you ask for money, you get approval, and then you don't spend it, and citizens suffer as a result. Because you see, Madam Speaker, no matter what they put in these yellow books and in the budget speech, no matter what they put in these books, the truth is that they already knew, they are aware that the truth, the reality will be different to what is in those books. Let me highlight the ridiculousness of this whole exercise with one example. For 2022, the Minister of Finance made the Parliament sit twice to ask for a total of $3.9 billion more than what was budgeted in the annual budget. Yet in fiscal year 2024, so he came back to the Parliament to demand, to argue for $3.9 million that he said was critically needed, it was urgent information, urgently required for supplementary variation. Do you know that he did not spend $4.4 billion? So all of that supplementary variation that he asked for More than that was approved and not spent. So what is the sense, Madam Speaker, of coming to ask for more money when you very well know, Mr. Minister, that you are not going to spend it to improve the lives of citizens of this country? Madam Speaker, at its very core, the annual budget is to provide expenditure for the development of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. A nation's development is not measured solely by economic growth and financial indicators. And even with those indicators, this government would fail. Development is about people, about enhancing the standard of living and quality of life of citizens. Economic growth is just a mere means to that end. But development requires a vision. It required articulated goals and objectives, strategies to achieve targets, and the development of a national plan. But just as important is the will and ability to implement that plan. This is the all-of-government approach required, where each ministry is pursuing individual policies designed to produce a result that dovetails into an overarching framework focused on enhancing Trinbagonians' current and future welfare. But for this Prime Minister, for this Minister, for this government and his team, people-centered budgeting, all-of-government approach, fiscal responsibility, and public accountability are mere sound bites. They have no value for them. That is why Vision 2020, Vision 2030, and whatever other vision that they claim to have, and the PNM roadmaps to recovery were just a comprehensive waste of time, man-hours, and millions of taxpayers' dollars. The government called all these professionals, businessmen, public servants, and various subject matter experts together and had them spend thousands of man-hours reviewing and presenting ideas. These individuals now know that the government used them as window dressing for a PR stunt that was never intended to be anything except a distraction. That is not how you engender confidence in decision makers in the private sector. That is certainly not how you develop a national planning framework. Between 2010 and 2015, Madam Speaker, people-centered budgeting ensured that development reached every sector of this country in every part of the country, Madam Speaker. But where are we today? One of my favorite artists, Bob Marley, says it. He says, "Who feels it, knows it." 2 months ago, Madam Speaker, Market Facts and Opinion released its Customer Sentiment Economic Report. 2 months ago. It is a very short but very graphic, objective report of the state of our citizens over the period 2016 to 2023. This survey specifically investigated the financial situation of the family in Trinidad and Tobago and found that the number of persons defined as living comfortably plummeted from an estimated 22% of the population in 2016 to 14% today. Almost half of the persons surveyed said that they were living out on a limb or barely meeting their basic needs. This clearly confirms the dramatic pauperization of a large segment of the middle class as a direct result of the government's policies. The MFO survey also revealed a frightening statistic that almost 20% of the population described themselves as struggling, unable to meet even their most basic needs, Madam Speaker. That is the nightmare faced by our citizens under this PNM administration. 88% of the respondents to this survey believed and believe that things will only get worse under this government. That is not the opposition saying that. That is Market Facts and Opinion, an independent survey group, Madam Speaker. But the MFO survey confirms what Central Bank survey also revealed since last year. The Central Bank reported that half of the people surveyed were not satisfied with their current financial situation. 29% said that they were just getting by financially. Another 29% said that they had no money at the end of the month. That is the reality being faced by citizens of this country under this PNM government. Madam Speaker, every national and local reports says that Trinidadians are suffering under this government. The Caribbean Food Security and Livelihood Survey conducted by CARICOM, the WFO, and the UN's Food and Agricultural Organization found that 1 in 4 persons in Trinidad and Tobago were severely food insecure, with 60% of the population being moderately to severely food insecure as of May this year, Madam Speaker. Armed with that knowledge, this is public information, Madam Speaker. Armed with that knowledge, what does our Minister of Finance do? Knowing that our citizens are suffering and the extent of the suffering that they are going through thanks to his government, what does the Minister of Finance do? Madam Speaker, the Minister of Finance offers to pay $5 million so that the Ministry of Finance's logo can appear in partnership with the Central Bank Literacy Program. His stated intention of that objective, is to target the at-risk community, to teach them how to manage their money. That is his solution. This would be funny if it were not so extremely sad. These persons are at risk in the first place because they have no job, they have no money in the first place to start with, Madam Speaker. That's why they're at risk. The minister would have done much better had he used the money to create jobs in these communities for these very same at-risk youths. Instead, the minister comes here to mamagai the population, Madam Speaker. This is in direct contrast to what was present under the government led by the member for Siparia, when the country was reaping the rewards of having an administration that was people-centered, future-driven, based on a solid plan and astute economic management. The Central Bank Literacy Program, Madam Speaker, is one of the few things that the Central Bank is doing well, and I urge the Minister not to blight it. Instead, I call on the Minister, through you, Madam Speaker, to do his job. The people want jobs, not talk shops. I shouldn't have to explain that to them, Madam Speaker. The minister has been in office going on 9 years now. He cannot not know. It is the job of the Minister of Finance to stimulate business confidence in the economy by creating the environment for sustainable domestic and direct foreign investment. A growing economy means more job, more development, and improved standard of living, and improved quality of life. So when you have a minister boasting about growth, but the data, which I just recited, that data, and all the other indices are saying something totally different, then look carefully at what he's saying, Madam Speaker, because when the words do not match the facts, something is wrong. And it is simply not acceptable to bring alternative facts to this parliament, to cherry-pick years and indicators for comparison, to give the perception that the country is doing well. Don't do that. The minister came to this parliament, Madam Speaker, with a straight face and told the country that the unemployment rate, the minister said the unemployment rate has declined to 3.7%. What he claimed was, and I quote, one of the lowest unemployment rates ever achieved in Trinidad and Tobago, end of quote. But what is the truth? What is the truth? Here are the facts, Madam Speaker. As far as the rates go, the unemployment rate the minister boasted about is not the lowest. It is not even the second lowest. It is not even the third lowest, Madam Speaker. In 2013, under the member for Siparia, the unemployment rate was 3.7%. But with 626,300 persons in jobs. Today, with the minister's 3.7, 38,900 less jobs are in the system under this minister, but he boasts about 3.7%, one of the lowest in the country, one of the lowest in the country's history, Madam Speaker. This minister has presided over the job loss of 35,900 jobs between 2015 and today. Not the 3.7% that he's boasting about, Minister. But only a PNM minister will celebrate failure and try to convince the population that he's doing better, that things are better for them. Just to be absolutely clear, Madam Speaker, the job situation has gotten substantially worse under this government, and no amount of statistical manipulation can change that. That is why, Madam Speaker, that is why there would be thousands of persons lined up on the highway for hours on end waiting so that they could get interviewed for one of the few jobs being offered by the prison service. That is why there will be thousands of persons lined up waiting to get a job interview to work on a cruise ship. That is why there will be thousands of applications for any job advertised anywhere in this country. Madam Speaker, according to this minister, out of every 100 persons in the labor force, only 4 are looking for work and cannot find a job. Based on what I just said, Madam Speaker, of the thousands lining up, that cannot be true. On a daily basis, there are persons coming into my office frustrated at not being able to get a job, especially youths, many of them who have been sacrificed and achieved certificates, including degrees, are today unable to find a job. Youth unemployment continues to be statistically higher than the national average, in many instances more than twice as high. Madam Speaker, if any minister here has been attending their office and meeting their constituents as we on this side have been doing, they would admit that there's a vast number of persons desperately seeking a job but unable to get one. Madam Speaker, as a policymaker, I had hoped that this minister would have used the budget 2024 or any of his previous budgets to be straight with the population. Confront the fact that there are serious unemployment issues here. Confront the fact, Madam Speaker, and consult the population and develop and implement a plan, a real plan for growth and development. Instead, the minister and his colleagues prefer the charades, the smirk and mirror deception and misinformation, Madam Speaker. But I believe in speaking truth to power, and that requires me to call out misinformation and mischief anywhere I see it. Where in Budget 2024 are the incentives to create new industries or to expand existing industries, to create sustainable, well-paying jobs to replace the tens of thousands of jobs you cost taxpayers, Minister? The one project that had some kind of potential, the one project, was the Phoenix Park Industrial Estate, which the Minister, the Junior Minister of Finance, was just boasting about. But pay attention, sir. Here are the facts that you seem to have missed. The one project that had some kind of potential to create jobs seems to be limping around, already 3 years overdue, unable to attract either domestic or foreign investors in that Phoenix Park Industrial Estate. This is the same Minister of Finance, Madam Speaker, the member for Diego Martin Northeast, who came in October 2020 and boasted that they had investors lined up. They had investors lined up and ready to occupy the same park. Amazingly, this is the same minister that on Monday last was here again, celebrating his failures of an occupancy rate. Oh, let me correct that since you're paying attention. Thank you very much. I'm glad you're paying attention. This is the same minister who came back here once again, celebrating his failure, boasting of an occupancy rate of a mere 17% as an achievement. You're boasting at 17% 3 years afterwards? What a shame. Worse, this is the minister who's now saying that that is the model that he's proposing to replicate nationwide. Failure breeding failure. Madam Speaker, the failure of the state to create new jobs, combined with this government's policy, which saw the closure of Petrotrin, the exodus of several companies, including 3 international energy companies within the last few days, Madam Speaker, and the closure of thousands of SMEs, has resulted in a substantial job loss over the years. This has had a knock-on effect on the society, on the economy, and on several key financial institutions, not the least of which is the National Insurance Board. Madam Speaker, since 2016, the NIB has had to fund its fiscal deficit by withdrawing from its investment accounts. This deficit was a result of several factors, the most significant being the shrinking contributory base and an increasing number of beneficiaries. Ironically, and perhaps, Madam Speaker, prophetically, 2016 was the first year of the PNM in office, with this current minister in charge of the NIB. In total, Madam Speaker, between 2016 and 2022, the NIB drew down $4.5 billion of its assets and investments to fund the gap, with the largest withdrawal taking place in 2022 to the value of $1.1 billion. It is expected, Madam Speaker, that for 2023, the deficit will be again another $1.1 billion. The government's solution is to increase the retirement age, with a wave of its magic wand, taking away 5 years of pensions from ordinary citizens. That is another opportunity that the junior Minister of Finance boasted. It was something to celebrate, Madam Speaker. But it is clear from the information I will now present that the government itself is directly complicit in the current crisis facing the NIB. When the opposition raised this issue in the House 2 years ago, Madam Speaker, the Minister of Finance, in typical fashion, dismissed it, saying our concerns that the National Insurance Fund was in pending crisis. It was a fantasy, according to him. Today, the country knows the truth. Drawing down on investment income, Madam Speaker, means that there's less money being reinvested in the investment portfolio for the future benefit of the NIBTT. Obviously, this will eventually result in a further depletion of assets. But the government and the minister must have known these facts at least since 2016, when the fund first went into deficit. What have they done about it? From 2016 to now, Madam Speaker, we are going on 8 years. What have they done about it? They have made it worse. According to a recent media report, Madam Speaker, which has not been challenged by any member of the government, 7 of the 10 largest debtors to the NIB, 7 of the 10, are government agencies and ministries who are negligent in making their payments to the NIB to the value of an estimated $250 million, $240 million, Madam Speaker. These include MTS, with a debt of $75 million for 2017 to 2020. But let me spend 2 minutes on MTS, please, Madam Speaker. It is reported that the NIB was seeking approval to initiate legal action against the government agency. Why, Madam Speaker, was this debt allowed to accumulate for 3 years? Why has no action been taken by the NIB against MTS? Whose approval, Madam Speaker, has the NIB been awaiting for the last 40 months to take action to retrieve monies owed to it? Whose approval is the NIB waiting on? Maybe the Minister of Finance, who is the line minister for the NIB, can advise why to date no action has been taken with regards to this outstanding debt. Is it because persons in high office at the MTS have strong political connections to the PNM leadership, Madam Speaker? I don't know. I'm asking for a friend. The Sunday Guardian reported, Madam Speaker, that the MTS has indicated that it is unable to liquidate its debt. That too has not been queried or posed by members opposite. Is it that MTS is also bankrupt, Madam Speaker? You see, this incestuous bad pay relationships, Madam Speaker, between government agencies has compromised the financial integrity of MTS, but it has contributed to the financial crisis that the NIB is facing right now. These debts to the NIB, these millions, these $250 million debts, are never included in the value of the central government debt, which the minister is boasting is falling. Yet it is a financial obligation that must be met. It was reported, Madam Speaker, and again, not challenged by the other side, that the Ministry of Education also had a $36 million debt to the GDP, to the NIB, sorry. Ministry of Education, 2 ministers here, they can defend it, hopefully. Ministry of Education had a debt of $36 million to the NIB. WASA owed the NIB $17 million. The Ministry of National Security, $12 million. Interestingly enough, Madam Speaker, the minister's solution to all of this, to the crises that has been confronted by the NIB because of the ministry's refusal and failure to pay, was to offer the government delinquents an amnesty for payment of outstanding NIS contributions without them having to pay interest and/or penalties. That amnesty ended in January this year. However, reports are that only 90 million of that $240 million outstanding was repaid. This means that, Madam Speaker, NIB's fund, the National Insurance Fund, continues to be suffering because of the substantial outstanding debt by the government of Trinidad and Tobago and their various state agencies, Madam Speaker. But also, Madam Speaker, what happens to workers at these organizations if the company refuses to pay its own debts? Is it that their contributions are not registered because the state agencies have not met their obligations? Madam Speaker, if an average citizen like yourself or myself do not meet our financial obligations to the NIB, we will face immediate action, including being charged and prosecuted in the law courts of Trinidad and Tobago. But ministries and state agencies under this government appear to be above the law. One law for the PNM and another law for everyone else. Madam Speaker, that is not the only way that this government has compromised NIB's financial status. And there are many other instances in which government action has directly contributed to job losses and therefore to the contributory base of the NIB. Overall, between 2015 and 2022, under this government, the NIB's financial reports, Madam Speaker, state that they have lost 12% of their contributors, with the number of paying employees falling between 2015 and 2016 and 2017 and 2022. With the number of persons falling who are contributing to the NIB falling by 61,500 between 2015 and today. And although the value of the contribution income has increased, this substantial loss of employee contributions would have had a detrimental and predictable effect on the financial health of the NIB. It is short-sighted that the minister's solution is to deny pensions for an extended period of 5 years, when it should be obvious that what was required is an aggressive increase in the number of contributors, and also this would have increased contribution income, but also be much more sustainable in both the long and short run. What the Minister of Finance and his government needed to do is not to increase the age, Madam Speaker, but increase the number of contributors, find jobs, create investment, create the environment for persons to want to invest in Trinidad and Tobago, to create jobs, Madam Speaker. But I am also extremely concerned as well about the value of the various benefits being offered by NIB and the effect that rising prices have had over time on their purchasing power. It should be noted, Madam Speaker, that recipients of these benefits are ordinary citizens who are heavily reliant on these benefits, to meet their financial obligations. The government's focus, however, implies that any increase in the value of these benefits are off the table, even as citizens complain that the real value of such benefits has been drastically falling. I recommend today, Madam Speaker, that the government increase the value of these benefits to allow citizens a chance at attaining an acceptable standard of living. Madam Speaker, overall, the failure of this government and this minister to adopt a multidimensional view of the financing problem facing the NIB, including and especially including aggressive job creation and the penalization of delinquents, is what has been responsible for placing the fund and the NIB by extension in a position of jeopardy. The laissez-faire approach by the minister to addressing these critical issues demonstrates the tendency of this Minister of Finance to kick the can down the road for future generations to solve. He has adopted a similar approach in dealing with the existing massive debt, foreign exchange crisis, and heavy debt financing requirements of this government's policies, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, let me deal with some of the fiscal measures that the minister has chosen, having already ignored, Madam Speaker, Him having already ignored, the Honourable Minister, Madam Speaker, having already ignored the critical issues, let me tell you how he addressed issues generally. Let me tell you what Minister's solutions have been, Madam Speaker. Adult literacy. The Minister announced the provision of $7.7 million to ATLA. $7.7 million to alter online, Madam Speaker.
Member for Oropouche West, the original speaking time is now spent. You're entitled to 10 more minutes to complete your contribution.
I thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
You may proceed.
Over 8 years, the Minister has discovered, finally, after 8 years, that thousands of our citizens have been denied basic education. And only now, as general elections comes closer, is the Minister trying to put some measure in place to treat with them. In the Minister's words, Madam Speaker, ALTA was restricted from reaching those in need of the service because they lacked the necessary devices to access the website. Amazingly, the Minister's solution is to offer $158 per person per month. That works out about 5 cents per day. That is not enough, Madam Speaker, to provide even the most basic phone or internet access to allow the very same people we are talking about to pursue adult literacy classes, Madam Speaker. That fiscal measure is a publicity stunt by this minister to create the impression that he's finally doing something about a problem that he has identified and created. Perhaps what is more unfortunate, Madam Speaker, is that there's nothing in this budget that shows that the minister and his government recognize the increased dropout rate of children from the education system over the last 8 years, which will create yet another generation of citizens with literacy challenges. That initiative, Madam Speaker, is pure mamagai. The National Financial Literacy Program has been in existence, Madam Speaker, since 2008, developed and executed by the Central Bank of Trinidad and Tobago. In 2019, the head of the NFLP announced a target of 50,000 persons per year using their own resources. What the minister is trying to do with his fiscal measure, Madam Speaker, is to rebrand and rename the existing and successful project by the Central Bank and claim it as a PNM government initiative. It is an attempt, Madam Speaker, to pass it over some new initiative costing the government and the taxpayer $5 million in deception, Madam Speaker. The community gardens and green markets that the minister spoke about, Madam Speaker, again, more mamagai. That system exists. The program is going on. A more common sense approach would have been for the minister to partner with the successful CGCC program and expand its reach, not create a parallel organization doomed to failure. The junior minister also spoke about the minister's junior achievement program, and they need to reintroduce it in schools, Madam Speaker. But why did this government stop the program in the first place? Why did the minister refuse to provide funding for this program he now acknowledges all of a sudden is so valuable to the development of our youth? Furthermore, Madam Speaker, the proposed allocation of $720,000 works out to an average about $3,600 per school, about $1 a day, Madam Speaker. Obviously, this is just a mamagai, a stingy one at that, destined to fail at the start, Madam Speaker. The minister needs to stop paying lip service to our nation's youth. Madam Speaker, I can go on. The assessment center and temporary shelter, Madam Speaker. This is to repeat the same plans that they have been putting forward year after year after year and failing. Because they believe that they need to have a one-size-fits-all solution which does not work. Obviously, Madam Speaker, what is required are targeted interventions and individualized assessments and treatments. And expensive billing is not a solution, Madam Speaker. This is just them throwing money at problems, hoping for the best just before election, Madam Speaker. The minimum wage, Madam Speaker, at $3 minimum wage. My other colleagues have spoken about it. At $3, Madam Speaker, the minister also admits at $3 minimum wage. He says that there are 190,000 persons who will benefit, Madam Speaker. It is a shameful thing that a minister of finance in a country like Trinidad and Tobago will admit that 190,000 of our members of the labor force are working for minimum wage. That's a shameful thing after 8 years and $420 billion spent. That increase, Madam Speaker, is not enough for a worker to buy a box of KFC, a chicken roti, or a small box of Chinese food. It is a mamagai, Madam Speaker. the market box program that the minister is boasting about. Last year, that was named a food box, Madam Speaker. This year, he didn't come to tell us why he didn't implement it. He came now to put a new label on it, call it a market box. Rebrand, rehash. No explanation as to why it didn't happen, Madam Speaker. Failure. The school grants, Madam Speaker, my colleague, the member who shadows the Ministry of Education, will tell you, Madam Speaker, that this incentive of $1,000 that the minister is boasting about comes after the school year. People don't buy the stuff already, Madam Speaker. The school supplies have already been purchased. So giving them the money now has little value in treating with the problems that they faced before. It is a mama guy, Madam Speaker. The Europreneur Plus program, Madam Speaker, that too has been functioning before. The minister comes now and wants to add money to it, to label it as associated with the government, Madam Speaker. Completely false, pure mama guy. Madam Speaker, the incentive to SMEs. Well, I want to spend 1 or 2 minutes on these SMEs, Madam Speaker, because it is a given fact, Madam Speaker. It is a given fact that SMEs have been begging for foreign exchange, access to foreign exchange. And this minister comes here and identifies a series of concerns that SMEs have been having, including in his budget presentation, Madam Speaker, including things like not having bank accounts, etc., etc. And then he lists out a series of initiatives he claims are supposed to be for the benefit of the SMEs. If they don't have banking information, etc., Madam Speaker, because SMEs are in crisis right now, I am sure, Madam Speaker, that those initiatives are not designed for them. They are designed, these SME initiatives he's speaking about, are designed for somebody else, some other entities, not the vast majority of SMEs that exist in Trinidad and Tobago, that he just identified was suffering. Madam Speaker, the minister proposes a fund which he says would be used, Madam Speaker, for the provision of support to the SME sector. Madam Speaker, on the last occasion, the minister increased and responded to increase the allocation of foreign reserves in the system. They use the same mechanism so that the same people who are getting continue to get. Those who are not getting have not been getting. Madam Speaker, I challenge the minister to consult with the real persons, consult with the SMEs and find out what they need. Make sure that the system is transparent, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, like all of Trinidad and Tobago, the constituency of Oropouche West continues to be suffocated by the policies of this government. I listened to PNM ministers boast today that the PNM government is providing pipe-borne water 24/7 in their constituencies, Madam Speaker. But their tax-paying citizens in Pinal, in Debe, in Woodland, and in San Francisco, and they have not had water for upwards of 60 days, Madam Speaker. No pipe-borne water, upwards of 60 days. And these ministers are boasting on their side how much they are getting, Madam Speaker. My area also suffers from bad infrastructure, Madam Speaker. Horrendous infrastructure works. Why are the people of these areas being victimized? Why? We've seen a massive increase in crime, but we don't have enough police cars. We don't have enough manpower in my constituency, Madam Speaker. Why is my area, why are people south of Trinidad and Tobago suffering and being victimized by this government? It is completely unacceptable. I challenge the minister, Madam Speaker. Let us put people before the politics, Madam Speaker.
Standing Order 48-6. We're not victimizing anybody.
So, member, could you just find another way, withdraw that and find another way to see that, please?
Why is this government treating the residents of Oropouche West less than human? Why? Don't they deserve more? Don't they deserve better, Madam Speaker?
Madam Speaker, Standing Order 48-6, please.
No, well, before you move on, you withdraw it, please.
I withdraw it, Madam Speaker. I withdraw it. Madam Speaker, to quote Buju Banton, from the minute of birth, you enter this earth, obstacles they enter your way. To overcome first, throughout every day, they seem to get worse. Oh my God, cast away this curse. Madam Speaker, it is time to cast away this wicked PNM curse from our land. I thank you very much, Madam Speaker.